a Whap Films production. A clash of worlds, and the exchange of ideas and goods led to new and transformed societies, where cultures collide and change the course of history. In a few moments, get ready for an educational learning experience. Whap 2017, The Arrival.
Hey guys, it's Gobbly the Turkey here, and today our focus question is: how did the establishment of American colonial societies affect European lives and the lives of the indigenous people?
After Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas, the Columbian Exchange was born, due to the introduction of the Old World to the New World. Columbus brought along a variety of goods and animals to his new settlement in the West Indies. However, along with these came diseases, such as smallpox, that later wiped out a large majority of the indigenous populations in the Americas. The map here shows the goods and animals that were exchanged between Europe and the Americas, such as corn, potatoes, sugarcane, citrus fruits, bananas, peaches, cattle, sheep, and pigs, as well as diseases like smallpox, measles, and typhus. Diseases from the Old World spread rapidly throughout the New World and devastated native populations who lacked immunity to European diseases.
Here in this graph, you can see that from 1518, about the time of colonization and the immigration of the Europeans, the native population began to quickly and steadily drop because of diseases like smallpox that affected 95% of the native population. However, around the 1550s, the population began to stabilize as the Amerindians recovered from the epidemics.
Missionaries from Spain and Portugal came to the Americas in pursuit of converting the natives in order to justify the colonization in the Americas. However, in the process of converting, they also enslaved the natives, forcing them to work in silver mines and sugar plantations. However, the missionaries took a different approach to enslavement, earning them respect among natives and allowing them to become links between the tribe leaders and Spanish officers. Some natives were open to Christianity and allowed missions to be built in their villages. This provided a place for missionaries to teach all the Amerindians about European practices and Christianity. The Spanish conquistadors, however, used violence in order to convert the natives, burning them alive, cutting off limbs, hanging them, and beating Amerindian children. Until the 1540s, Spanish authorities divided natives among settlers and forced them to provide forced labor or goods under a system called encomienda. As epidemics and mistreatment led to a decline of Amerindian population, laws were established to eliminate the encomienda. In 1502, Bartolomé de las Casas came to Hispaniola. There he witnessed the horrors and the mistreatment of the Amerindians by the Spanish, including the many deaths that followed. His experiences influenced him to become the first bishop of Chiapas and become a vital advocate for the Amerindians. In 1542, Bartolomé wrote a letter to the Spanish king Felipe about how he felt about the harsh ways the Spanish were treating the Amerindians. In his letter, Bartolomé is very respectful and holds his king in the highest regard. He is very careful in informing the king about atrocities that he is witnessing and the abuse of the natives, but in a polite manner. He talks about how he believes that coming to the Americas to convert the natives and showing them European practices is righteous. However, he highly disapproves the abuse of the Amerindian, who he believes are kind people. Bartolomé urges his king to stop the conquistadors from continuing their exploitations of the natives. He goes on to say,
Most importantly, that your majesty not concede such license, nor allow those terrible things that the tyrants did invent, pursue, and have committed against those peaceable, humble, and meek Indian peoples, who offend no person.
In the end, his efforts were rewarded with the establishment of the new laws of 1542, which outlawed the enslavement of Amerindians and limited other forms of forced labor.
In Latin American colonies, Powerful conquistadors and early settlers sought to create a hereditary social and political class similar to European nobility.
Here's the hierarchy in the Latin American colonies, where the peninsulares or Spanish landowners are on the top. Next comes the Creoles, who were the upper class, then the mestizos and the mulattoes, who received no inheritance and were the middle class. Finally, the natives and slaves are at the bottom, who had no rights at all.
After a century of colonial settlement, mixed-race people were the majority in many regions. Mestizos, who were of mixed native and European blood, and mulattoes, who were of mixed European and African blood, were placed in the middle and intermediary classes respectively. These mixed groups were called castas in Spanish America. In the English colonies, there were plantations, especially in the Chesapeake Bay area, that initially relied on English indentured servants for labor. Indentured servants were Europeans that came to the New World through sponsors that paid for their passage in exchange for a set time of labor. When the Europeans got to the Americas, they had to work on their sponsor's plantation or land until their debt was paid, for typically 4 to 7 years. However, as life expectancy increased, planters came to prefer to invest in slaves. The slave population of Virginia increased from 950 in 1660 to 120,000 in 1756.
In this chart, it shows how in the 1700s the Europeans dominated the population, while in 1755 a wide variety of Europeans started to come to the Americas, along with Africans, as the slave trade increased.
By the 1660s, Virginia had developed a form of democratic government that was administered by a crown-appointed governor and representatives of towns called the House of Burgesses. This expansion of colonial liberties and political rights set them apart from other European colonies, even though its slave population dramatically increased. Colonists in the Carolinas were initially dependent on the fur trade with Amerindian deer hunters. The consequences of the fur trade included environmental damage brought on by overhunting, Amerindian dependency on European goods like firearms and alcohol, and ethnic conflicts among Amerindians fighting over hunting grounds.
The southern part of the Carolinas was settled by planters from Barbados and developed a slave labor plantation economy, producing rice and indigo. As rice and indigo became more profitable, enslaved Africans and their descendants formed the majority population and developed their own unique culture influenced by African language and belief. In the Middle Atlantic region, the Dutch West India Company established the colony of New Netherland, located near the Hudson River, and established trading relationships with the Iroquois Confederacy in order to gain access to Canadian fur trade. The Iroquois Confederacy was an alliance of 5 northeastern Amerindian peoples consisting of the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca tribes that made decisions on military and diplomatic issues through a Council of Representatives.
In England, a group called the Separatists, also known as Pilgrims, protested against the Church of England, who they believed violated true Christian scripture. To be able to freely practice their religion, on September 6, 1620, a group of pilgrims went on the Mayflower and sailed 66 days to Plymouth Rock. There were approximately 102 men, women, and children aboard the Mayflower, and about half of them died along the way. On December 25, 1620, the Pilgrims arrived in Plymouth, today Massachusetts. There, the Wampanoag, a native tribe, helped the Pilgrims by teaching them how to hunt and plant crops in the rocky soil. 10 months later, in 1621, they had their first successful harvest and celebrated with a huge feast with the Wampanoag. This was the first ever Thanksgiving.
In many of the colonies, the natives were recovering from epidemics and more immigrants were arriving from Europe. Silver mining increased, as well as agricultural exportation of tobacco, cotton, and sugar, which benefited the economy. In the colonies, however, the monarchy was stopping elective assemblies, imposing taxes, and closing down schools, which caused rebellions and native uprisings like those of Tupac Amaru II, who wanted to avenge the natives that were mistreated by the Spanish. Then there was the French and Indian War. Since the war was costly for England, taxes were raised in the English colonies, which would push the colonists to begin the American Revolution. Hey guys, remember in the beginning of the video when we talked about the crops and animals in the Columbian Exchange? Well, a wide variety of them were diffused into other cultures beyond Europe and the Americas. For example, chili peppers from the Americas and onions, sugarcane, and beef from Europe are commonly used in a popular Asian dish known as Mongolian beef.
95% of my population.
The empire has fallen.
And it is what Jesus said in the Bible.